It's been more than 2 years since Dr. Paul Wotton joined me on the Business of Biotech. In fact, it was episode 9 in the summer of 2020 when Dr. Wotton came on the show to talk about his unique approach to keeping the lights on and the labs running when large swaths of the world were locked down during the early days of the COVID-19 pandemic. His company, Obsidian Therapeutics, survived and, in fact, just recently announced FDA clearance of its first IND application. I'm Matt Pillar, and on today's episode of the Business of Biotech, it's welcome back to Dr. Paul Wotton, CEO of Obsidian Therapeutics. On today's episode, we're going to discuss precision medicine and what that means to Obsidian. We're going to get a behind-the-scenes look at the company's recent IND, and we'll have a bit of a retrospective on that unique approach Obsidian took back during COVID to solve its workforce crisis during the pandemic. Dr. Wotton, thanks for joining us. Welcome back to the Business of Biotech.
Thank you, Matt. It's great to reconnect after a sort of hectic 2 years or more, maybe, since I was on the last show that I did with you guys. And pleased to say we've made good progress here at Obsidian, and very excited now to be able to share the news that we're getting up ready to dose our first patient with our technology as a result of what we did through COVID, in fact. So yeah, all good.
Yes, it is all good. And I'm hoping we can kind of bring all those themes together here as we kind of look at what's going on at Obsidian now, and kind of, like I said, do a bit of a retrospective on the progress and growth that have happened despite and during the pandemic. But I want to start with that IND. That's the fresh news. It was just in July that Obsidian and MD Anderson announced the FDA's clearance of your IND application for your tumor-infiltrating lymphocyte therapy candidate, OBX-115. So that's been about 2 years in the making, I think, since the agreement with MD Anderson was announced. So let's start with that candidate. Tell us about the candidate.
Yes, so we have developed a TIL therapy, which is going to be able to target solid tumors. We're starting out with melanoma. But this IND is actually applicable to more than one tumor type. So lung cancer, for example, would be another one. And what we've developed is an engineered TIL that carries its own membrane-bound IL-15, which it's like a battery pack for a TIL. But this means that you do not need to give patients IL-2 therapy when they're receiving TILs, and IL-2 is a cytokine that's quite potent. About half of the patients that take IL-2 as a result of going through TIL therapy actually end up in the ICU. So we're clearly going to be giving these patients the therapy now, which will obviate the need for an ICU to be present, which opens up the number of study sites you can work in. But most importantly, I think it's a better therapy for the patient as well, because it's IL-2 free. So we also are able to treat patients who are frail, that couldn't tolerate IL-2 therapy. Now they'll be able to have an option of using an engineered TIL to treat them, which is going to be as effective as a regular TIL, just much easier to use in terms of its side effects. So it's actually really good news. We developed it in conjunction with our colleagues down at MD Anderson. All of this was done during COVID, so it's actually fantastic to be able to come out of that 2-year period with an IND clearance under our belt. Yeah,
for sure. I want to learn a little bit more about what the patient population looks like. You mentioned a couple of indications there. So, you know, as you look to begin clinical trials on the heels of this IND, what are you looking for in terms of the patient population that you want to recruit?
Yes, so for the first trial, the first patients being dosed will be patients with metastatic melanoma that will have been through 3 lines, no more than 3 lines of checkpoint inhibitor therapy, and they will be eligible to participate in our TIL trial. And as a reference point, the patient population that we're going to be looking at is basically the same as what was known as cohort 4 in the recent IVANS data that was published. So that's the same. It's a real life population of patients with metastatic melanoma. There'll be normal age range for TIL, and we're going to be doing this this work initially down at MD Anderson, which we hope to be starting very shortly in terms of bringing patients in and starting to treat them.
Yeah,
and it really is imminent.
Yeah. What does the patient population look like down the road? So post clinical, like what is if you will, the market opportunity, let's say, look like for Obsidian with these therapeutics?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think that let's just say we have an IL-2 free TIL right now, which is this membrane-bound IL-15 approach we're using. You would be able to treat patients who are unable to tolerate IL-2, number one. And that means that you can actually treat patients who may not have access to a center like MD Anderson. So we'll be able to broaden the number of patients that are able to be treated just based on where they're located as much as anything else. Mm-hmm. And secondly, when you treat a patient with metastatic melanoma, the average age of diagnosis for melanoma is somewhere around 65 years old. In lung cancer, it's actually 71 years old. So when you have a TIL therapy, I think once you're getting to about 75, you become ineligible for TIL therapy anyway. So and that's because of the IL-2. So we're going to be able to treat these older patients that are more frail with our TIL, give them hope that we can actually cure them. And the number of indications we go after, I think, in terms of tumor type, the first one's metastatic melanoma, because that is the one that's used as the gold standard for TIL therapy. It's been used for about 20, 25 years to treat metastatic melanoma. So there's no target risk to us. And then with respect to lung, I think that's a much bigger market opportunity because there's many more patients present with lung cancer than metastatic melanoma. So, and I think the other part of this is that we're going to be able to treat these patients in more of a domestic setting than a hospital setting, which I think is better all around. It's actually more cost effective too. Yeah.
You mentioned, I think you used the words in your response to my last question, patients who are intolerant or don't have any tolerance for IL-2. You know, I'm obviously not an expert, not a scientist, but I've done a lot of reading on IL-2, you know, and failed attempts over the years with IL-2. And it occurs to me that intolerant patient population must be very large because the toxicity has been a big problem with IL-2 from the outset, has it not? Like, hasn't that been the big issue with multiple companies pursuing IL-2?
It has, yeah. That's actually it's a really good point, because for IL-2 to be effective, you need to give it at high concentrations systemically, and that's something that has been done with that genetically engineered IL-2. The challenge, though, with IL-2 is it's got a very short half-life, so it gets cleared from the body quite quickly. And that's why high-dose IL-2 is necessary to get systemic levels that are able to actuate cell therapies, as an example. But that high level comes with the consequence of side effects. And so there's been a recognition about this, and people have attempted to engineer their way around it by changing the molecule, for example. Which it sticks around a bit longer in the bloodstream, but those approaches haven't been as successful as I think they would have liked to have been. So I think the real answer here is to be able to deliver high levels of cytokine locally, whether it's IL-2 or IL-15. So you could potentially think of a platform where you can localize the IL-2 expression to somewhere like the peritoneal cavity. Or you could look at what we're trying to do, which is to attach the cytokine IL-15 to the cell surface of a TIL. And when that TIL reaches the tumor, then the IL-15 effectively only works within that tumor environment. So you localize the effect of the cytokine, and you've got it at a high concentration where it's needed most. And that avoids the systemic circulation, which I think is really important. So that's the approach we're taking. Localized delivery of cytokine at high levels is really what we're trying to achieve. So it's effective where it needs to be effective, but doesn't have any effect systemically.
Yeah. Perfect. You just answered two questions in one, because I was going to ask you a little bit about the mechanism of action, how the thing works, and you touched on that for me. So thank you. Heading into clinical studies, what does your manufacturing environment look like?
Good question. So one of the reasons we went into the partnership with MD Anderson was because they actually have TIL manufacturing capability down in Houston. In fact, they had it when we signed up with them. Quite shortly afterwards, they acquired a 60,000 square foot state-of-the-art manufacturing facility from Bellicum Pharmaceuticals. And that facility itself has now gone into a joint venture with Resilience, which was announced, I think, in May of this year. So we now have access to a site that is a commercial site. It's a joint venture between MD Anderson and Resilience, and we can manufacture our TIL therapy there using a state-of-the-art facility. So we're going to be doing that. The beauty of that is it was a seamless transition for us, because the development work around this TIL therapy was all done down at that facility in MD Anderson over the last 2 or 3 years. So we've gone from being able to engineer the TIL, which we did all of the work here in Cambridge, to being able to optimize its production down at MD Anderson. Mm-hmm. And now we've actually been able to transition that seamlessly into an organization which is committed to providing commercial facilities to manufacture all types of cell therapies. And we're there right at the start with this facility at MD Anderson. So I think we've pioneered something in a sense.
I was going to ask, I mean, how as you were talking, you say you pioneered something, and that maybe that gets to the next question I was going to ask around, like, what is that? How do you characterize this relationship with this facility at MD Anderson? I mean, is it technically or, officially called a CMO, or is it not? Like, how do you kind of characterize that relationship?
Well, we put a all-encompassing JV together, I guess is a way to describe it initially, with MD Anderson, where we were partnering with them to run the clinical trial with us, to do the manufacturing and optimization of manufacturing with us. And the whole purpose of this was to get our technology platform into patients very rapidly, more rapidly than we could have done if we'd have done everything ourselves with a CDMO, for example. So we were able to expedite our first into human study by working in partnership with MD Anderson along the development side, the manufacturing side, the clinical side, and actually working with their reg affairs group as well to get the IND put in, basically cleared. So we have been able to work with them. They had a lot of experience already working with TILs. They actually have their own TIL program down there. So for us, it was a way to expedite our technology into the clinic as rapidly as possible. That's important for a biotech company, because you really want to know that your technology works as fast as you can. So this is what we're actually doing. And then next year, we will be working with the same program in effect, but we're expanding it to more than one study site. And we will be working with another commercial CDMO to actually manufacture a product that will be able to go to multiple study sites. So to do that, we've already actually done most of the development work around a cryopreserved product now. So we're gearing up, ready to start that entry into multiple study sites as we speak.
Yeah, very good. So this is not Paul Wotton's first rodeo. I mean, you held leadership positions at Merck, Abbott, many clinical stage biopharma companies along the way. Certainly, this isn't your first IND experience. It's probably one of several that you've notched along the way. How is this one? How is this one different?
So, well, I've never done a program like this when we've all been locked down before. So it's very different in terms of.
Yeah, I wasn't, honest to God, I wasn't even thinking about the obvious answer when I asked that. That's that question.
But you're right. I've had INDs put on hold. And the thing that I find I've gravitated towards career-wise is taking a technology platform like the one at Obsidian and being able to turn it into a development product that you can actually get into the FDA and start treating patients. So it's being able to pivot from being a platform company to being a company where you actually are going into the clinic for the first time with your own technology. And then the other part of that is making sure that you also have validating partnerships along the way. So we have both BMS and Vertex here at Obsidian. So that strategy has been the same at Obsidian as other companies I've worked with. If you go back in history, you'll see I ran a company called Antares, which was a injectable platform company, which was able to pivot towards becoming eventually a specialty pharma company based on injectable products. These were at-home administration of injectable products. That company just got acquired by Halozyme. So it's something that I like doing. I like taking platforms, turning them into products. Obsidian was no different in that respect. I think the way we approached this, though, which was to take what is a very complicated therapy. Cell therapy is always complex, but this is an autologous cell therapy. And the way for us to expedite that was always going to be by working with a group that was more experienced in working on these autologous cell therapies than we were at the time. And that's why the MD Anderson relationship was so important. Mm-hmm. And then, just going back to COVID, I mean, I think we would have not have developed that product ourselves internally in anywhere near like the time frame we were able to do it in conjunction with our colleagues down at MD Anderson.
Yeah, I'm gonna come back to that COVID thing as I said a little bit later when I'm gonna ask for an update on the Swift platform and where that went and how it kind of led you through those dark times. But before we get there, I want to spend a little bit more time talking about this IND, and I want to kind of frame the next couple of questions up in the context of our audience. So we're heard by a lot of leaders of biopharma companies that have yet to hit this milestone. Mm-hmm. And you just hinted at some sort of, I think to me, fundamental aspects of this particular IND. The partnership aspect was important, obviously, to kind of backfill that expertise area. But I'm wondering if you can help kind of distill for our audience a few more pivotal moments along the way, right? So in this example or in any example, sort of pivotal moments that you've seen as the leader of biopharma companies that have done this several times along the way that are sort of fundamental to the effort.
Well, I think the pivotal moment for us here at Obsidian was identifying that we actually had a path based on our platform to developing a product, which was the IL-2 free TIL, which was something that we had identified as an opportunity about 3 years ago, in actual fact. So it came as a result of scanning the whole of the cell therapy area, and we were looking for a place to apply our own technology. And we worked out that an IL-2 free TIL using our own membrane-bound IL-15 approach was actually a good opportunity for us to pursue. And then we got together in October of 2019, actually off-site, and that's where the whole team got together to start planning out this program for what became OBX-115. And so I would say the pivotal moment for us was identifying that there was an opportunity we could use with our technology, and then getting together as a group to plan that out, because I think that when you have a rigorous plan, and we do go into a lot of details on our planning, you always are sort of aware of some of the things that could come back to bite you. You have contingencies in place. And I think importantly, it means you don't panic when things go wrong, if they go wrong. Yeah. And if things actually present themselves as an opportunity to accelerate the program, you can also recognize those opportunities as well. So actually going through that scenario planning with this was really important. And getting the team together on the sort of offsite meeting for a couple of days was also very pivotal to us being able to get to where we wanted to be.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna segue then. I've got more questions for you around the therapy, but you just brought up a beautiful segue around overcoming challenges. So I'm just gonna go right into the COVID thing, and I want to get an update there. As I mentioned, the last time we spoke was I believe it was July 2020, and when we when we talked. And if you go back and listen to episode 9 of the Business of Biotech, you'll hear Dr. Wotton and I spent a lot of time talking about a platform called Swift that Obsidian developed, purpose built, like custom, a software platform. It's been a couple of years, so I may get some of the details wrong here, but a software platform designed to help Obsidian schedule through the disruptions of having minimal, people in the labs and in the offices at once, that would maintain the pace, or at least attempt to get to this point where you are now with the IND, but still respect lockdown laws and internal rules around keeping employees safe. That platform subsequently became something that I think you guys, if I'm not mistaken, licensed to some, at the time, 30 other life sciences companies to go out there and use. Now, I don't know if that platform even still exists or if there's a necessity for it, if it's grown into anything. But I guess the question I have for you around that platform and that conversation we had 2 years ago is, and hey, if the platform does still exist, feel free to hawk it and tell us, but the big question I have for you is, coming out of that experience, where, the name of the game was keep the lights on, keep people in the office, move in the lab, moving things forward, efficiently. What have you learned? What did you learn back then that you've been able to transfer to the Obsidian that we're looking at today, around, process efficiencies, for instance, or, working through challenges with minimal resources at times, obviously during COVID. What takeaways did you kind of pull out of that experience?
Well, I think the first takeaway I would say, and this is a general statement really, but I think, all of the companies that are in this particular area of the country are innovative companies. And in this particular case, we just took innovation to a different level, in a sense, because we were innovating outside of our core competence, which is biotech, and were able to develop Swift. But it was a technology approach which was developed as a result of a massive need we had, which was to keep the labs up and running, whilst the rest of us were out of the office. And so that was really important for us. It was actually being able to recognize that there was a need to do something. And I was just fortunate that we brought in a really great IT guy, Nick Betts, in, I think it was about December of 2019.
Yeah.
And
I remember you talking about Nick a couple of years. Is Nick still with you?
Nick is still with us, yes. Yeah. And so we were able to implement two things. One was Teams. In actual fact, Nick came to see me in December and just said, I need to spend money on a Teams program. He said it'll make the company much more efficient. And I let him do that. And then in January, we were all trained up on Teams, and none of us anticipated that by the end of February, we'd always be working on Teams. And so Nick came to us, implemented that. So that was a pivotal moment for us, in actual fact, just bringing IT into the company rather than relying on an outside provider and grabbing control of that. And that went further because it meant that when we were dealing with MD Anderson, we could set up all of the links to them pretty quickly. But then on top of that, we had the Swift opportunity as well, which was driven in part by somebody who's now the CEO at Chroma, Catherine Steeman-Breen, who was an epidemiologist by training and just told us quite point blank in February, this thing's going to get really big and really fast. And that's when we recognized that we needed to do something. So without Catherine, I don't think we'd have reacted as fast as we did, because she understood what the pandemic was going to look like. And because of that, Nick was able to react in real time and develop Swift with his group and the group in the lab. So that kept us going. We still use a variant of it today, but times have changed, and we have a full house here. Actually, we have two sites now, one in Cambridge and one in Bedford. But we're operating effectively as a normal company now. Yeah. Although we still have people who are sort of running a hybrid approach to the workplace environment.
No, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, but Swift is really, it's kind of yesterday's technology for us now, in a sense.
When you're striving to excel in a new arena, the best guides are the ones already doing it well. The Business of Biotech brings those voices forward to help new and emerging biopharmas turn their innovations, like mRNA and cell and gene therapies, into clinical realities. Tune in and subscribe for insights on hiring, regulatory, and other need-to-know topics for biopharma leaders. The podcast is brought to you in collaboration with Cytiva. Check out their resources at cytiva.com/emerging biotech. That's CYTIVA.com/emerging biotech. I would imagine. I mean, I'm assuming. I'm not sure. I don't remember. You can refresh my memory if that was something that you licensed out as a software as a service that was for sale to other life sciences companies. You were just giving them the technology, but I imagine that opportunity is probably sort of dried up as well. Obsidian's not so much a software company anymore.
No, we didn't, and we never extracted revenues out of the technology. We were just very altruistic at the time because we're all faced with this situation. One thing that was really important, I think, during COVID was the level of cooperation that we all encountered with partners. And one of the other things which I think contributed to our success was our ability to develop really good relationships with partners, whether they were supplying us with the viral vectors we use, whether it's working with Bristol Myers Squibb on their programs. We were pretty much all set to be able to do all of that during the COVID lockdown.
You solved a problem with a software application, which is extraordinary in and of itself. You solved that problem to work through a crisis situation as a team. In a strange way, when you experience something like that, there are, as I said, takeaways, lessons, perhaps, I don't know, infusions of something in the company culture that you don't necessarily want to get rid of. You don't want to lose that, right? Even when things get back to some semblance of normal. So looking back on it, retrospectively, what would you say Obsidian has hung on to or adopted or learned? How did that experience kind of shape who you are today and what you're doing today? Are there remnants of it, within the company?
Yes, I think the first thing is it's all about people. So we were able to recruit good people during that period. We did have people leave the organization as well, but we kept the culture going. I think the other thing that we've maintained is just the importance of good planning and not panicking when something goes wrong. I mean, the pandemic was something that no one anticipated, but just being able to keep calm and steady and move on through the programs, I think, was really important. And that's something that's part of our culture here as well at the company.
Yeah.
And then the other part of it was being able to communicate well with our partners that I referenced earlier, and just making sure you have regular touch points with them. And I would say that a few of us, myself, and particularly my CSO, Jan, whilst we didn't expect other people to do this, we weren't slow in getting back on planes and traveling to see people. So I think trying to establish those personal contacts very early on during the resolution of COVID was also important.
Yeah. One of the inherent challenges in what Obsidian does is the fact that when you're developing novel precision therapeutics, you're doing a lot of stuff that's not been seen before, to put it very frankly. And you're engaging regulatory authorities who in many cases haven't seen this before either. So I want to get back to that, the therapeutic itself, and get your perception or some thoughts around your experiences with regulatory agencies, for instance. How have you sort of navigated this precision, patient specific, words like engineered qualities of your cell and gene therapies through the regulatory experience?
Well, I have to say that we found the agents, the FDA, to be really good to work with. And they've been, for us, a really good partner along the way. So we did have pre-IND correspondence with them. This is a new technology, a new platform. And I think that they were quite thoughtful in the way they approached it, as were we, by the way. So, but it was all driven by just having good data. So we were very thorough in the data. And we approached the agency and had nothing but positive feedback from them, very helpful feedback. We are actually trying to treat a very difficult disease to treat, metastatic melanoma or lung cancer. And I think they saw the need for what we're doing, which is the ability to provide a TIL that's going to be safer. And we'll see in the long run, because we also expect it's going to be more potent as a TIL. We've certainly seen that in the animal models, but at the very least, it's a safer way to provide TIL therapy. And it's going to be a lower cost way to provide TIL therapy as well. So the value proposition is clearly there. And the agency were just very supportive of what we're trying to do here.
Mm-hmm. Well, what do those pre-IND meetings look like? Give some, I guess, insight into what those meetings look like for those who haven't seen them before.
Well, we have, well, actually, ours was all done virtually again, because we weren't able to go and meet with people. But, you just got to check off the science, the checklist, make sure that all the experiments are laid out, and make sure you've done all your safety studies correctly. We had an advantage in that we're dealing with an autologous cell therapy, so the safety, there's very little long-term safety that you have to address in these initial stages. But overall, I think the agency were very cooperative. And remember that they're also operating in very difficult circumstances as well. They're virtual most of the time. And so I was actually quite impressed by the way that our team was able to work with people to get stuff done, mm-hmm. which at the end of the day is what it's all about.
Tell me about, while we're talking about personalized medicine, you're not producing, a monoclonal antibody or a small molecule that has universal application to, one people and perhaps even multiple indications. You're building very specific therapies for very specific people. And this is I'm going to start at a high level here because it's a difficult question to drill down on, but I want to get your perspective on what that means from a business perspective. You're the leader of this business. And obviously when we get into personalized medicine, the dynamics change from a patient identification standpoint to, a payment standpoint to an addressable market standpoint. So I don't know where you want to start with this rambling question, Dr. Wotton, but what's the biggest, I guess, change that you anticipate from a business perspective, given the fact that you're building this precision therapy?
Well, in actual fact, I am lucky enough to be a board member at Vericell, which has done autologous cell therapy for quite a while. They do skin grafts for burn patients, and they also do chondrocyte replacement for knees. And so those are cells that are taken away from a patient, they're grown up, and then given back to a patient in 3 to 4 weeks' time. So what we're doing with TILs is really identical to what they're doing with that type of therapy. So I've been able to see that, at least as a board member, as to what they do to be successful. And then with respect to our own TIL product, what we're doing is taking a patient's tumor, we're extracting the lymphocytes out of that tumor, and then we're growing them up in a lab to a sufficient number of cells that can be then given back to the patient in sufficient numbers to actually make a difference to fighting their cancer. So I think that, yes, it's a complicated process, there's no doubt, but some of the things we have to keep an eye on, though, is how do we keep production costs down? Mm-hmm. Because at the end of the day, if we make this more accessible, we've also got to find a way to make the economics better for everyone all around. And as an example, in fact, elimination of IL-2 alone from both the manufacturing process and from the way you treat the patient is going to result in a savings of 6 figures. So straight away, we're able to see that we can achieve that. And secondly, we were able to develop a new manufacturing process for our TILs compared to what other people do, because we have the IL-15 on the TILs already. When they're in the lab being grown up, we're also able to make that manufacturing process more efficient, we're able to design the manufacturing process to give you better TILs, younger memory phenotype, for example. So we started off with a blank sheet of paper, and we're able to design a product that we think will be more cost effective. And I think we've taken an approach here which will lend itself to providing more patients with access to TILs, better accessibility. And if we do what we think we can do with our TIL, then there's going to be quite a high demand for that. And then it's just a matter of how do you drive down cost of production and make it really good value for money for patients and for the healthcare system.
Yeah.
And
go ahead.
I was going to say the other part of that is that you also have to build up right from where we're sitting today, because this product could be launched in 26, 27 if everything went well. One of the other benefits of sitting on the board of Vericel, I've seen the way those guys have been able to provide the right kind of patient support, physician support, and put all of the infrastructure in place to make sure that reimbursement is not going to be a gatekeeper for access to that therapy. So starting to think about the commercial opportunity now, how we build that out. We've actually already modeled out what a commercial organization would have to look like for us.
Yeah.
But you can't start thinking about these things too early on. No,
that's true. And I was about to jump in there with a question around administration, which is, that's exactly where you're going with that. What does that administration or, commercial administration environment look like in an ideal world for Obsidian, as much as you can share?
Well, what I can share is we'll be, well, in terms of administering the product, what we're going to be doing is taking the patient's TILs, growing them up in a manufacturing facility, which will probably be a centralized facility, and then shipping them out. This will be cryopreserved product to centers like MD Anderson, as well as centers which may not be geared for IL-2 treatment right now, but could well be geared towards giving cell therapy. So there are, for example, CAR T centers in this country that don't qualify as being able to give TIL therapy because they don't have a crash suite next to an infusion suite. To be simplistic about it. So we actually think that we'll be able to open up that commercial opportunity, making sure that we can provide product. We're not using any technology that hasn't been used before in terms of distribution. That's already there. So, and then I think it's just a matter of setting up all the right Salesforce infrastructure, the right consultative approach to being able to make these people use our technology successfully. And then we'll see where this business goes. But I think that it'll be a successful business ultimately, because we are providing a better TIL, and TILs work. We know that. And so if we're giving this better TIL to patients, we can treat more patients. I think the value proposition is definitely there.
Yeah. Is it a situation, looking down the road? Again, like you said, it's never too early to look down the road. So looking way down the road, is it a situation where, if successful and the administration and, distribution and administration model is demonstrated at a place like MD Anderson, where is it a situation where a lot of interest will generate kind of organically from their administration and other clinics? I mean, and among specific physicians and oncologists who pay attention to this stuff, do they kind of see that play out in a place like MD Anderson and say, okay, maybe we don't need to sell our hard closing sales guy in there because we got some fans already?
Well, I think that it's a great question. I think that the value of working with a world leading organization like MD Anderson actually pays off, because it creates awareness of what you're doing. Ultimately, it's going to depend on the data. So we have to develop really good data in our clinical trials. And I think the data is going to be what makes this successful. And all I can say is we've tried to build for that success by working with the best people we can work with at leading centers, whether it's MD Anderson or some of the people we're working with on our viral vectors. Yeah. For example, we've tried to build a partnership model where we're working with the very best in whatever we do, plain and simple.
Yeah. Cool. So speaking of the data, looking at OBX 115, when we sign off on this interview here shortly, you're going to turn around and get back to work on the early part of this clinical study. What's that work going to look like? Like what's imminent? What's happening right now to get closer to that data on OBX 115?
Right. So we're in the process of site activation right now at MD Anderson. We expect to have our first patients in September, and then we'll be giving our TILs to our patients in the first patient in October. And we should start to see data coming out of this program in Q1 of next year. So we'll know how well the technology works. And I think that from there, once we've actually got a good fix on the fact that our technology is working in the first few patients, then we obviously want to do one of two things: expand and accelerate the program and develop the technology for use in cancers beyond melanoma, which would be lung, I think, in the next case. In fact, I know that's going to be the case. And on top of that, we're going to have to raise financing. So the time to do that is probably in the first half of next year, when we've actually been able to show that our technology works in man. We've treated a lot of mice successfully. Now we have to treat men and women.
Yeah, that's I can imagine. We spend a lot of time talking about financing on this show with leaders of biopharma companies, and the timing strategy, especially at a early clinical stage like you're at right now. There's got to be quite a bit of strategy that goes into that timing. Like you said, going out and looking for financing once you've got some probably solid early clinical data to go out there and hang your hat on. Are there other considerations, like at this stage in the game for Obsidian, other considerations that go into when you go out there looking for that next round of financing? Obviously, the cash runway, I'm sure, plays into that decision as well.
Well, the cash runway, we were able to raise the Series B this time last year, which is 115. We already had cash on our balance sheet that was quite strong because of the partnerships we've done. And we're good until the third quarter of 2024 with cash. We actually have 2 years runway on our books right now, which is important. And so I think that we'll be able to see good data during that time frame. And but you can never have enough cash on the balance sheet of a company. And the real use of that cash for me would be accelerating the programs, which is what we intend to do next year. So the right time to raise money is when you intend to do more with what you have in terms of technology and make sure that you've de-risked it to the point it's actually going to work in patients.
Are there any candidates worth noting coming on the heels of OBX 115, or are multiple studies of that candidate sort of the focus in the immediate future?
Yeah, I think the technology itself certainly lends itself to more than one tumor type. So, melanoma one, lung cancer secondly. We have others we're thinking about too. And then behind that, we've actually started a really interesting analysis of what becomes the next generation TIL. So we're looking at OBX 115 now as a chassis, where we can then engineer in another protein and regulate that. So we've actually identified one candidate that looks really exciting. It's a non-obvious candidate in actual fact, to work with IL-15 to make the tumor microenvironment more susceptible to what we're doing with our TILs and for them to be even more successful. So we're now taking this to the next generation. And I can see that's very much for the future. What we have to do right now is just keep laser focused on getting OBX 115 into the clinic and treating patients successfully with that one.
Awesome. Good stuff. What haven't I asked you, Dr. Wotton, that I should have? Am I missing any important or big parts of the story here?
I think you've got everything, actually, Matt. It's been a pleasure seeing you again, and really happy to be back here after just over 2 years. There's a lot of water passed under the bridge, but we're all still here. And I have to say that as a company, we've we haven't missed a beat on our way to the clinic. We did exactly what we said we were going to do. We filed the IND early in actual fact, and we're treating patients slightly earlier than we anticipated. But it all comes down to good planning and good people, and putting that group of people together almost 3 years ago.
Yeah, I can't say I'm surprised, because as I reflect, even as we speak now, I reflect on our conversation 2 years ago. I remember the story idea, the pitch crossing my desk. Here's a Ph.D, a biopharma founder, longtime veteran of the space, whose company developed a software program to help manage people and resources.
Right.
And I thought, boy, I don't know, but I don't know if that really fits the bill. But then we recorded that episode and we talked, and I came away from that conversation with utmost confidence in Dr. Paul Wotton's problem-solving ability. So I guess I can't say as though I'm surprised that you've flourished despite the challenges for the past 2 years and got to this point. I congratulate you on your awesome news around the IND clearance. And I don't anticipate it will be another 2 years before I have you back on the show, because what I do anticipate is an exciting conversation in the near future around the data coming out of these clinical trials.
Yeah, there's a lot going on here, and I don't know whether my problem-solving capabilities are that good, but what I'm really good at doing is just bring a group of people together to make something happen. And we've just created this phenomenal group here at Obsidian, and guess what? We've made it happen. So now we just have to get into the clinic, and look forward to chatting with you some point in the future when we start seeing data trickling from that. Yeah, well, for sure. And I wish you and the team all the best in the meantime. Thanks for coming on. Matt.
Yeah,
Bye,
thanks for coming on, Dr. Wotton.
Cheers.
So that's Obsidian Therapeutics CEO, Dr. Paul Wotton. I'm Matt Pillar, and this is the Business of Biotech. We're produced by Bioprocess Online in partnership with Cytiva. Cytiva demonstrates its commitment to early and clinical stage biopharmas at its Biotech Accelerator, a trove of terrific content at cytiva.com/emerging biotech. Check that out. Check us out at bioprocessonline.com. While you're there, subscribe to my newsletter. And if you're enjoying the podcast and conversations like this, please subscribe, give us a great review. And as always, thanks for listening.